with micromanaging and being in the details in the wrong way, it could be or will be your downfall.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's something that when you emotionally invest yourself in your business in the wrong way, and you don't allow other people to step in and help you and take care of those things, it's a little bit selfish. You think you can do it all.
Yeah.
That's the process I had to go through to start little by little separating myself.
So there was like a transitional phase from you wearing all the hats and doing everything to trusting other people.
In my industry, which is in real estate, if you typically go hire a videographer, it'll be like $150, maybe $300. And right now, for that same video, for just a video of a house, our team will charge over $1,000, $1,500, if not more. We're doing one next week that's basically 10 times what the average rate is.
So how, like, is it branding? Like, what's your secret?
I'm very clear on your goals and what value you provide. And if people can't pay you for that value, then you can't lower your standards, because ultimately it actually will hurt them too. They're not going to get what they want. You're not able to provide the service you know you can for. We have a no revision policy.
Wow.
So once we deliver a video, and we're upfront, we are creatives, so we are hired to do a job, and we don't do revisions. Yeah. We send it to you and we've had big clients like builders in multiple states that I tell them this, and they're like, we're concerned about this. And I tell them, like, you're hiring us to do the best of the best.
Yeah.
If you believe we'll over deliver, which is what we always want to do.
Yeah.
Then there should be no issues.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another podcast on suits and shoes. And I'm so honored today to introduce a friend of mine that flew in today for this podcast with this awesome wife. Mr. Timothy is here today with us. And Timothy has experienced tremendous success in the videography world, more so emphasizing in commercial real estate. And I just remember you mentioning how much money you made doing it. And I'm like, wow, I think I'm in the wrong business. So Timothy, you got a family, you're involved in the church, you're running a business, scaling a business, multiple businesses. What does it take to be Timothy?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation to be here. It's an honor. I mean, I'm in a position where I'm growing, I'm learning a lot, and to be able to learn from those that are way ahead is like, and to sit down and talk about it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
For what it's like to be Timothy, I mean, it's every day you wake up and you're like, what am I going to learn today? What's the new challenge I have to face? And who can I ask that could actually help me figure it out? Because I think when you're young, you think you can figure it out, do everything on your own. Google's one click away. But you start to realize that there's people that know things you don't even know about. And once you start kind of looking at that aspect of life, like, who can I ask that can teach me something I have no idea about, things I'm not even considering, the world starts to become like much bigger, and you start to see things in a new way. It's really exciting.
That's awesome. I mean, you got a lot going on, so let's just dive right in and start with work-life balance. You know, in my life, I'm similar to a handful of radical entrepreneurs that say there's no such thing as work-life balance. I harmonize family, faith, personal time. I don't have hobbies, so that makes it easier in work. And, you know, a realistic image of that is every business trip that I take, my wife's with me. In between conferences, events, and meetings, we're traveling, we're shopping, we're going to coffee shops, we're taking the, you know, pretty Instagram pictures that she wants to take. What does work-life balance look like in your life? Are you one of the few radicals?
I think I'm still early along in the journey where I'm still figuring that out. And to be fair, and it's never easy because you're pulled in so many directions.
Right.
But one of the things my wife and I have really worked on, especially at the beginning of this year, is having those rocks that we are having as non-negotiables. So like throughout the week, there's certain times like we want to make sure we meet on Fridays, where we have our Sunday evening kind of meeting for the week, or we have our Saturdays set aside for family time. And I also am starting to realize there's different phases in life, where some phases of your life, they're a lot busier. If you hired a few new people, you're going to be extra busy. But it's really a work in progress. And I'm trying to take advantage of looking at other people that are doing it and seeing what effects it is having on their life. Like if they have no balance, what are they going to be like in 20 years?
Yes.
And that's the thing where I'm trying to see, like, what can I do to learn from them? because I don't, this is not an area I want to mess up and just
Yeah.
try to wing it.
Yeah. Life's too short to learn from your own mistakes. You got to learn from the mistakes of others. One of
Yeah.
our founding fathers of the greatest country in the world, the United States of America, said that. Um, that resonates well with me because what kind of shapes me and the decisions I make and who I look up to and learn
Mhm.
from is a Bible verse my grandmother actually instilled inside of me. And that's in the scriptures, it says, looking at the end of their life,
Yeah.
aspire to their fate.
Mhm.
And that's just me mentally translating it from Russian because I haven't memorized in Russian.
Yeah.
And so I always look at people that have gone through life.
Mhm.
When someone asks, who are your friends, who you hang out with? I'm like, well, you probably don't know them. Talking to my peers, you probably don't know them because my youngest friend is 47 years old. My oldest is 76 years
Mhm.
old. It was 93 years old, my grandmother, but she passed away. So now my next oldest friend is 76 years old. And I look at what they did right and I ask them the hard questions. Hey, what did you do wrong? And that shapes me in who I am today. So it's interesting that you highlight that. I want to start with your childhood and how it shaped you
Mhm.
into the successful entrepreneur, family man of faith that you are today. And we'll dive into each category as we go through this podcast. So what worked as a child? What did your parents do to be able to, have, a child like yourself? And I'm not asking because I don't have any kids, but parents
Mhm.
ask me this all the time. And I feel like every successful young person I talk to, they say something very similar. So I'm curious to hear, what did your parents do right?
I think I'm very privileged, and I'm really grateful that my parents and my grandparents, who were always close by, they really cared.
Yeah.
So they were always pushing you to be better. Like I was told, like you have to write out Bible verses. I was pushed to like play piano, and I always saw my parents working hard. They came here from Ukraine
Yeah.
with nothing. Their degrees meant nothing. My dad was working 2 jobs. I saw what hard work was, and that was for me. That was the standard. I just didn't know anything else. But as you kind of start growing older, I'm the kind of person that started asking a lot of questions. Why are we doing this? Why do we do this? Especially when it came to church and just big life questions like
Yeah.
what's the purpose of life? And this was around like 11 years old. My parents did a really good job with directing me in the right direction. And
Yeah.
from 12 years old, I was attending like a 4-year university with a bunch of 50-year-olds
Oh, wow.
every other week or so in
Yeah.
our church. And that's when I started to really see and be able to learn from these people that are 50-year-old, and I was able to kind of see a vision of like, this is where I want to be in 50 years. This is what I want to do with my life. I want to have an impact. These teachers are coming from um, like Ukraine or Europe. Leo Frank, for example,
Yeah.
they're teaching, they're inspiring. Um, and I want to do something as big as that. That's kind of where my
Yeah.
journey started. And I started to realize like, well, what's in my way of doing that?
Yeah.
Why am I not going to be able to do that?
Yeah. Leo Frank's an interesting name that you mentioned. I actually was going to attend one of his conferences and I missed it. So I sent him a text. We knew each other through a mutual friend.
Mhm.
And he sent me like 10 of his seminars because I asked him, like, hey, I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better man. And I'm not going to make your seminar. And he's like, well, I have 10 that I really like. And he sent me all 10. So I'm like
Mhm.
reading through all these seminars. I'm like imagining him saying it through his voice.
Mhm.
And I just think like, if only the younger generation, especially Gen Zs, I guess millennials is kind of too late, but the Gen Zs to like really, I take that back. It's never too late. So if you're a millennial and you feel like you're too late, it's not too late. Listen, to really change the trajectory of your life.
Mhm.
What about things that were done wrong? Because I know in my life, I don't like talking about it, but I have to, or I feel like I'm obligated to
Yeah.
in order to prevent parents from making the mistakes that my parents made. And they're few, far and few, but there were a few.
Mhm.
One of them was my mom always wanted me to be a banker.
Mhm.
And she'd always push me. And the reason she pushed me through college and pushed me, and to this day, well, I should say up until recently, because I acquired a stake in a bank, so now I'm a bank owner, I guess you can say. So she's pretty proud of me. But I noticed the more she pushed me into being something very specific,
Mhm.
the more I didn't want to do anything in general. It just almost felt like I'm being forced to do something I don't want to. But in the caveat, what my dad did that really offset that is he'd constantly remind us and my mom that God has a different calling for every single one of us.
Mhm.
And so that's how my sister was able to become an attorney, which is kind of unheard of in the Slavic community. And then other sisters, finished colleges and got, really nice degrees, and all of us went our different ways. And so it was like a good harmony. And so if
Mhm.
I had any advice for parents is don't push your kids to one specific thing, push your kids to pursue their fullest potential.
Yeah.
Is there anything in your childhood or maybe that you've observed in other parents that they do wrong that could have or does have serious repercussions?
There is something that I saw other people in my life were doing wrong, and I'm thankful my parents were willing to invest to not do this, which was being able to talk about the hard topics.
Yeah.
And I think the danger is when there's a young person that's just fresh. They don't have bad intentions of asking tough questions, but when they ask them and just pushing them away, there's a really big danger that they're going to start looking for those answers in the wrong places. And for me, it was really important to see my parents taking the time to have those 3-hour conversations to really help me understand, and then also even admit that, you know what, we don't have the answer.
Yeah.
And that was really something that I saw, and it made me want to honor them,
Yeah.
even if I knew they didn't have all the answers. And yes, they came from Ukraine. Like, they're used to having that typical trajectory. If you go to school, you have a degree, you have your typical approach to a career. And I just didn't see my life that way. I would tell them, like, well, you guys are self-employed, you run your own business. I want to do the same thing. I don't want to go to college. And that was kind of a challenge we had, but they were gracious enough to actually let me make a decision. Yes, they had their opinion, but when I made a decision, they blessed it and they supported it. And
That's amazing.
That was something I don't know where I'd be if they weren't there to like guide me and to support me in those decisions.
Yeah, that's amazing that you mentioned that. It definitely resonates with the experience that I had. And so kind of moving into, childhood, into early, I guess, adulthood, when you started your own business. I still remember the day I asked a mentor of mine who's got very successful enterprise of manufacturing plants. And I asked him his thoughts on me starting a manufacturing plant. And he told me, Paul, you either got to be crazy or you got to be crazy to start a manufacturing plant.
Yeah.
And I quickly realized in starting my own business what he meant by that. I realized that, wow, only about 10% of businesses make it past $1 million in revenue. Only about 1% of businesses make it past 10 million in revenue. And so, just statistically speaking, of the business venture that I put my whole heart and body and sweat, blood, and tears into has a less than 1% chance of succeeding. It was kind of crazy, but I knew I wanted to make a global impact. I knew I wanted to change lives, and that's kind of what propelled or pushed me into starting my business. What about you? Like, what made you decide to take this crazy step of starting your own, not one business, but multiple businesses?
I think, kind of going back to school, I never just took things at face value of like, you have to do it this way and this way. I'd always see like, well, there's a better way to do it.
Yeah.
And when I was 16, I remember sitting, the day I turned 16, I went to the bank to open an account and then open an LLC. I was waiting to turn 16 to do that. In my mind, I was thinking, well, I have at least like 4 years until I have to move out.
Yeah.
And the worst thing that can happen is I could try for 4 years, I'll fail. I'll still be where I am right now, which is where most people are, like still living with their parents. And so I kind of allowed myself to fail as much as I could.
Wow.
I did a lot of different things. I was trying to source things from China. It failed miserably.
Wait, you failed in something before?
Absolutely, yeah. I think my first customer, when I was 16, 8 hours a day, just working nonstop.
Wow.
Got my first customer in 9 months. So it
took you 9 months to
took me 9 months to get our first customer. And even then, I barely made money on it, but it was thrilling, and it allowed me to have that time frame where, let's say it takes you 5 years to really get stabilized in business, where you can kind of breathe a little bit. I had that time frame, like turning 21, where most people are just getting out of college. I'm 5 years into business. Yes, it wasn't glamorous. I'm not driving a fancy car, but it allowed, with God's grace, to get married, buy a house, and start a life without feeling like, man, I'm behind.
Yeah.
No, don't get me wrong. There's still times where there's even today, like, man, what are we going to do? How are we going to make payments? Like, how are we going to grow? There's bigger challenges now, but that 5-year runway of like no bills, no worries, no family to take care of, it gave me so much freedom to learn about what I do, what I can do, what my strengths are. And I'm really grateful for that.
It's crazy. It's almost like you reverse psychology yourself, because a lot of times people say, I want to wait, do it later. I want to learn first. I want to get a degree first. I want to raise the funds first. But you're like, I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail big. I'm going to fail forward. I like to say, what if it does work?
Yeah.
Every time someone says, hey, what if it doesn't work? I hit it with, hey, what if it does work?
Yeah.
And so that's really interesting that you kind of took a different approach to it. Do you feel like that's what you would advise or recommend someone wanting to start their own business? Just jump into it and do it, or
Yeah.
more conservative, hey, let's spend 10 years thinking about it and then doing it?
I think there's actually two young guys that came to me recently, and it's been really awesome to have them come to me and ask these questions like, hey, I don't know what to do. What should I do with my career? And I always tell them, like, stop trying to figure out what to do, what you want to do, where you're going to be in 5 years, because you don't know the answer. There's
Right.
no way for you to know the answer. You're 16 or you're 18. And one recently, this guy, I was like, okay, write down like 20 ideas of possible career paths that you could possibly take. Find 3 people in each area and just spend the next half year talking to those people.
Yeah.
And I was like, by the time you get to like number 5, you'll have more opportunities than you can handle.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you can do that, and there's no way to fail at that. You're just going to talk and learn. And a lot of people, instead of doing that, they'll just sit there scrolling, ideating, writing down lists, and here's what I could do. Here's what talking to people of what they could do.
Yeah.
It's not that complicated. It just takes a little bit of taking one step at a time.
Yeah. I had the chance to speak to a bunch of high schoolers yesterday. We, like, every week, every other week, a different high school come to our factory. And at the end, the first lady of our state requested I just share something that inspires them. And so this time around, I'm like, usually I give like 3 reasons to succeed or 5 reasons to succeed or what made me successful. And I'm like, I'm going to switch it up a little.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give 3 reasons people fail. And reason number 3 was screen time and scrolling.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what do you guys think the average individual today spends their time on their phone? More so Gen Zs, you guys are all seniors in high school. And one of the girls in the back, and this is the first time anyone's ever guessed right. One of the girls in the back raises her hand, which is kind of shocking to me. I'm not used to people raising their hand to speak. It's been, 15, 20 years since high school. And she goes, 11 hours. I'm like, young lady, you're the first person alive. And I've spoken to thousands of people just in the last few years to have guessed right. Most people say 3-4 hours, 11 hours. And it's like, you're already wasting that time. Why not invest it in yourself?
Yeah.
You kind of mentioned failure early on. I want to fast track to today.
Mm-hmm.
Your business is intriguing to me because most videographers, photographers struggle to break, $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing, you're breaking $1 million over and over again. What differentiates you first and foremost? And then secondly, are you still experiencing failures or letdowns in your life?
Absolutely. First of all, yeah, you still have a lot of challenges, and the bigger the team, they multiply.
Yeah.
More
money, more problems.
Yeah, exactly. The mental switch I had to make, which was, you're a creative.
Yeah.
You want to be in the weeds of the details of every little thing. And it was kind of almost heartbreaking. Like, it's a craft you love.
Yeah.
And if you want to be in it as a business, you have to separate yourself from it. But I remember making that, it was a process, but slowly, like, divesting myself emotionally from it, which is still something I have to do today, which is like, you started a business from scratch. You're so emotionally invested. And one thing you mentioned in one of our calls, which was, hey, what got you here, if you keep it up with micromanaging and being in the details in the wrong way, it could be or will be your downfall.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's something that when you emotionally invest yourself in your business in the wrong way, and you don't allow other people to step in and help you and take care of those things, it's a little bit selfish. You think you can do it all.
Yeah.
That's the process I had to go through to start little by little separating myself.
So there was like a transitional phase from you wearing all the hats and doing everything to trusting other people.
Yeah.
And the cost of that was sacrificing doing something you're really passionate about.
Absolutely.
So in other words, you're doing stuff that you're probably not passionate about in exchange to what you thought, or in exchange for something you didn't even expect.
Yeah. Well, the reason why is because, yes, I loved doing videos. I loved the whole process, the creative process.
Yeah.
But what I loved more and what really excited me even more was building a team that actually I could impact. And then taking that even further is using that team to impact the world in a way that is beyond just the business, the clients, just serving God's kingdom in a way that I can't if I'm just working at a normal job or if I'm just going average speed.
Yeah.
So for that sake, you kind of die to yourself, and this is something you have to do in order to achieve things beyond your own person.
Yeah, I think of all the things that made me want to give up or quit, none of it was because of the hard work, but it was trading what I'm passionate about, and that's building stuff with my hands, building the vans, installing I'm a trim carpenter at heart. So doing the trim, working with my father-in-law, working with my dad, exchanging that
Mm,
for accounting, legal issues, customer support, that is what almost broke me. And not because I didn't want to do the work. It was because the work that I had to trade what I'm passionate about,
mhm,
something that I'm not only not passionate about, but something that I think today it's called an irk or something like that, but something that like just really gets to me.
mhm,
Like whenever I have, a legal issue or accounting, trying to figure out, how to restructure an entire financial statement or close the books for the year, and there's the numbers aren't adding up. For me, it's like I love how my grandmother used to say it's a foreign language.
mhm.
You might as well be speaking a foreign language to me. But that's a trade-off we
Yeah.
as business owners have to make, because it's like a coach. Every coach at heart, what do they love to do? Play the sport that they're doing.
Mhm.
But what do they have to do during game day?
Right. Plans and
And
plays.
on the sidelines, right? And so many times I feel like I'm sidelined for my own business because I don't get to be on the field and play, but that's the cost of business ownership. Failures. What are some failures, and how have you overcome them running, videography business?
I think the biggest failure is not letting go fast enough.
Yeah.
Because that holding on to things it slowed me down at first,
Yeah.
and getting in the way of my own self was actually probably my biggest failure.
Wow.
Thinking I'm too smart, which yes, you can say you're smart, you're
Yeah.
hardworking, but um, one person can only do so much.
Yeah.
And because that was my mindset initially, I got in the way too much.
Yeah.
But thank God that I'm still very young. I have the opportunity to change that. And even in the past couple months, after like joining the
Yeah.
mentorship program, seeing first of all the shift in my personal mindset, family mindset, and then after that into the business side of things,
Yeah.
um, the foundation that it's being laid, it's really exciting to see how things are taking off.
Yeah.
And you can just see it's like the waters like break open on like a dam. It's like
Yeah.
the things that were stopping you were yourself. You let go of those things, and you see all those things that can now that are now possible.
Yeah, I love the quote, and I don't know who said it or if I made it up. If I made it up and it's not on Google, please give me credit. But confidence and ego are the same shade of gray.
Hmm.
You need confidence to rise up, but ego will bring you down. And it's like they're so close, they're so similar to be able to differentiate them. I love how David Wilkerson once said that ego, that passivity or whatever term he uses, but the same meaning, is one of the last things a Christian notices. And I think that's, especially as a Christian business owner or
Hmm.
any business owner, that ego is probably one of the last things that we notice in ourselves. And a lot of times when we do notice it, it's oftentimes too late.
Hmm.
Oftentimes you already lost your company. I'm coaching a former successful business owner on the West Coast that lost everything at an older age. I think he's in his 50s.
Hmm.
And having a conversation with him about ego, it startled me to hear that, like, wow, even at a later age when everything is blooming and big, if you're not careful with that ego, that
Yeah.
I think I know it or I have it figured out, is so dangerous. Talk to me about your inner circle. Talk to me about the people you surround yourself with and how they shape you into who you are.
I remember looking at my grandpa, who is a really big inspiration to me, be, primarily because when I look at his life, I can see that it was genuine faith, genuine service towards people in every area of life. And I think he's made a really big impact on how I do things behind the scenes, behind
Yeah.
closed doors. And when my wife and I got married, it was something I didn't really expect, but you're stepping out into a new world. You're a blank slate. You can do whatever you want. And for the first 2 years, I would say, we were kind of just trying to figure out like who we are, what we are as a family, what we want to do. We knew that when we got married, we wanted to accomplish together more than we can without on our own,
Yeah.
essentially. And right now, that's actually something we're actively working on, carefully looking at who can we take example from in different areas of our
Yeah.
life, going back to that verse of looking at the end of their life.
Yeah.
and just taking example very intentionally.
Yeah.
And I can't say that's something that we've actually finished, because we're taking one step at a time, trying to find the right people to get mentorship from, get advice from.
Yeah.
As Paul says, like, find those men or those women in some cases that can teach you and pass down that faith or that knowledge that I don't want to spend my whole life getting and that I don't have the opportunity to use.
Yeah. I don't have the chance to inspire a lot of young people in regards to my business or scope of business, which is manufacturing, because very few people want to get in manufacturing today. You, on the other hand, have a chance to inspire, I feel like, everyone, because it seems like everyone and their sister wants to be a videographer, photographer. It seems like there's so many people in the space. It's driven down pricing. There's a dealer that we use, and he goes on some portal to find photographers, and the price has been driven down. I remember we used to pay $1,000 for a professional photo shoot. Now it's like, I think we're down to $150 for professional photo shoot of a van. So it's like a car shoot, 30 pictures and a reel. For, I think it's $100, $150 is what the price was driven down to. And so, a saturated market where demand is, where supply is higher than demand. How do you differentiate yourself? How do you succeed? Like, inspire people. Like, this is your chance. I want to hear it.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. In my industry, which is in real estate, if you typically go hire a videographer, it'll be like $150, maybe $300. And right now, for that same video, for just a video of a house, our team will charge over 1,000, 1,500, if not more. We're doing one next week that's basically 10 times what the average rate is.
So how, like, is it branding? Like, what's your secret?
I think the biggest thing is going to be branding and positioning yourself as the expert. I remember when I was starting off, I had no clients. And so the first couple of days I'm cold calling. I try to like reach out and it's hard to even get free work.
Right.
And so I'm like, this is not right. I don't want to be chasing people. And I started to think about, and this is something you can do in any business, is how can I get them to come to me first? So it came down to positioning. I was networking with local magazines, local partners that could position me in front of the right people. And then from there, it's back to like being genuine with your intentions. If you genuinely want to provide that ROI where someone works with you and they get a return that they can't get anywhere else. And for us, what that really means is, yes, anyone can point a camera at a person. Not many people understand what it's like being on camera, let's say as a videographer. So you can't direct that person as to how do they talk and walk and sound confident on camera. That's something that it's as close to public speaking as you can get, which is people's number one fear. So as a videographer, your real job is not creativity. If it comes to like branding, it's helping people overcome their biggest fear, which is talking in public and looking better than they ever do.
Wow. And so you're actually filming the realtors as well. You're not the person on camera.
Yes. So that's the main thing we sell to people, is we can help you look good on camera.
Oh, so you're like, not only do you get a house video, you get a branding video.
Yes.
That's what's selling houses, I hear nowadays. That's crazy.
Yes. And so what one client we were talking to, she was like showing us her video, and I'm like, it's this much. She's like, yeah, but I can go and get the same video for $300. Like, I can have someone copy you. And I told her, I was like, yes, you definitely can. But in this age, what's important is to be first or to be the best. And if you are copying someone for a fraction of the cost, it's possible, but you're always one or two steps behind.
Yes.
And so what we're helping people do is innovate and be at the forefront, be the leaders of whatever sphere or industry that they're in.
That's powerful. It's interesting how like one or two little pivotal points can really set you aside and a leader in the industry or the space that you're in. I know for us in our space is vital as well. Most companies will change their RV or expedition vehicle every 3, 4, 5 years. They'll produce the same one every year. And so we're changing so fast, so quick that it's just like overwhelming, and it raises that barriers to entry to a really high level that makes it really hard to get in. Manufacturing is kind of, and real estate is what I specialize in, and coaching as well. It's pretty scalable, but I feel like videography is a service-based business model, and probably, in my opinion, one of the most complex businesses to scale. What's your experience been scaling a service-based business?
It's been very tough, because you're working with personalities. You're working on, like, you can't really define creativity.
Yeah.
And say, hey, I want you to do this. Every time they produce something, it's different. And that's just the nature of the work.
Right.
And it was a very long uphill battle, probably for 4 years between, okay, we need to get more work and we need to find and train someone that can fulfill that work, back and forth. And this past year or two, it's been transformational where instead of trying to hire just the first person that comes to mind, I started to hire based on not the creative talent, but on the people's mindset.
On personality, almost.
Personality. And so one of our hires that we had was, I basically took someone that was an interior designer, no camera equipment experience. I brought him on. It was actually basically we were competing for this one person.
Wow.
3 different companies. And I brought him on, took 3 months to train him. I bought him all the camera equipment. And this was kind of humbling where just this past week, he created a video that I would say was on par with something that I could create after years of experience. And that's where I realized it's the talent is not necessarily the creative talent, because creativity can be taught if they want to be taught.
Yeah.
It's being able to find those people that have the qualities that a creative person typically doesn't have: the stability, the organization, the drive, the people kind of aspect.
Yeah, be moldable. I call it a attitude check. So before doing an interview and reviewing resumes, anytime we're hiring an upper level or a higher tier employee, and also sales and marketing are 2 departments I'm heavily involved in. So anytime it's something to do with those categories, my first meeting is an attitude check. So before we dive into references and interview questions and where do you see yourself in 5 years, I just do an attitude check. And it's a 15-minute Zoom call. And I just feel you out. Like, what is your attitude? What is your vibe? What is your energy level? And then if you pass that, then the whole interview process begins. And so it's interesting how you highlight that you found something or someone that was moldable and they're able to become as successful as you. So it makes me wonder, a year from now, they're probably going to outgrow you and be more successful or more talented than you. How do you retain that service-based talent?
I think the way I'm kind of looking at that is when someone comes to hire us, they're not hiring one person. And I actually intentionally sometimes don't let one person work with the same client too many times. And so what happens is, like, in the course of a year, if the client has 30 projects with us, they worked with 5 different people.
Gotcha.
So in their mind, they're not hiring one team member, they're hiring a company. And that's how we found success. Because my first challenge with that was when you're going from being yourself as a videographer to a team of people, it's hard to bring on a client and then you don't show up. They're like, where are you at? I hired you. And that was also something we had with branding. I changed our name from, most videographers have their company name as like their name plus visuals. Yeah. And we intentionally, before I was even hiring someone, I changed it. I made us look like a big production company. Kind of, you fake it till you make it. But that allowed us early on to position ourselves as like, we're a team. You're not hiring one person. And
you're hiring a company.
Exactly.
And the name?
Orange Visuals.
Orange Visuals. I like that.
Which is also like, I don't even like the orange, the color orange. It's just simply so that people would remember it. It's all very
unique. I like that. I want to transition now into our faith. You know, faith is, from my observance in your life, plays a huge role and similar in my life. Can you go into detail what faith actually looks like in your life? Because it's evident that it's the core and the center of what you do, but I want to hear more of day-to-day activities or things that you and your company do to really show that it's not just branding or advertising, but it's actually something you guys stand by.
There was this one broker, he's older in life, and I've known him for a few years, and he came to us. I was sitting with him, and he's asking me about like building this brand, opportunities he has. And he's like, I just don't know what to do. And after some conversation with him, and I think this is where faith comes in, is not being afraid to actually put it into action and show people that this is a faith issue, not a branding issue. And I told him straight up, I said, what you're asking us to do in marketing is not a marketing problem. You need to go to church and you need to get some spiritual counseling. And I said that to him, and he appreciated it. And I think that not being afraid to be open and tell people like, can I speak openly with you? And say,
you need Jesus.
Yes. I know sometimes you're more subtle, and the more subtle version of that would be you share, let's say a client shares their big vision of, I want to have all these things. And I'm like, that's what's going to make me happy. And then you say, I'm a Christian. I'm actually already happy
Yeah.
and I'm going to achieve a lot, but I'm not doing it to be happy.
Yeah.
It's like Matthew 6:33 says, like, seek first the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, that's been a very big part of like how I do business.
Yeah.
Of course, nobody's perfect, but um, showing people your faith is so important rather than just telling them about it.
I'm already foreseeing the questions I'm going to be asked in regards to your business model. You don't have to share everything if you don't feel comfortable
Yeah.
or something proprietary, but I want to circle back and dive deeper into your business model because
Mhm.
that's something that can really impact people's lives. Like there's even people here in this room today that could really use that feedback, that advice. I probably on a monthly basis have videographers and photographers that are super talented
Mhm.
reach out saying, "Hey, I'm so tired of the cost of camera equipment." I had one
Mhm.
videographer spend $300,000 on 2 Red cameras and all the gear that goes with it, and just not seeing the ROI. Another videographer bought a nice van and converted into a video production studio and just not seeing the ROI.
Mhm.
It always pains me like they've invested so much, they believe so much, but they're just not having that success. And I call it the baker's dilemma. So many times bakers want to open a coffee shop or a cafe, a bakery, and they fail.
Mhm.
And so the baker dilemma, in my opinion, is you're not a businessman, you're a baker.
Yeah.
And so, is there a way, or how does one overcome that dilemma in the um, videography and photography space?
Um, this doesn't work for everyone. When I was starting videography, my problem was, how am I going to get customers?
Yeah,
And you work with a barber shop, you work with a restaurant. Those people don't talk to each other. It's so hard to get that momentum, which is why I got into real estate. And this is how I approach things. So I was like, okay, I need to work with the realtor. I reached out to the number one realtor. I was like, can I do some videos for you? I was like 17. He's like,
yeah.
okay, do you have any examples? I was like, no. I will go and film my parents' house.
Wow.
I recorded the video. I sent it to him. He hired me, and this is where the equipment comes in. I came in there recording video of a house, which usually you need like super wide angles. I
Yeah,
had wrong lens, wrong camera. I did the best I could, and that's where you kind of start um, to grow. You have to find the clients first.
yeah,
You can't go. The client's not going to come because you have a camera.
yeah,
Really find out what's that one client type, what's that one category of
yeah,
people that you can help so much that they have to tell other people about
yeah,
it. Once you have that, the camera equipment will come. And I have people on my team that make fun of me. Like, I've asked you to buy these lights for 3 years now. And I'm like, we have good lights. That's
yeah,
not the problem. That's not going to make the difference in our business.
yeah,
If I need to buy new equipment, I will, but it's the service, it's the coaching, it's
yeah.
the problem solving for the client. It's
Yeah.
really what you're getting paid for.
That's so true. It gave me a flashback to when I started my podcast. I have multiple multi-million dollar businesses, a lot of cash flowing through the different companies. And when we set out to start this podcast, I said, we're not going to do the mistake every videographer podcaster does and do a crazy studio, crazy cameras. We're going to set a budget and we're going to start with the resources that we have. And the first person I interviewed was Doug Pitt, Brad Pitt's brother. He's a
Mhm.
very successful businessman and philanthropist. And we go to his house. What resources do we have? It's a startup. We're not taking money from other companies to start it. It's starting as a startup. My wife had a camera she used for photography in college. We rented a lens, rented the wrong lens, by the way. We found some cheap microphones on Amazon and we needed a second angle, right? And so we used my iPhone
Mhm.
and we filmed Brad Pitt's brother on an iPhone, a regular camera, no lights, nothing. And it's probably our most viewed, most watched podcast.
Yeah.
And for me, it was almost like a beacon of hope and an example. I wanted to show the world, like, whatever venture you want to start with what you have.
Yeah.
I love the biblical examples. Anytime God called a man or woman to to accomplish something great, what was the first thing he asked? What do you have?
Mm-hmm.
Look at Moses. Moses, what do you have? The widow and the son. Hey, what do you guys have?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go take it, fill it with the oils. You're gonna have one.
Just ask what you guys have.
What do you guys?
And,
What, and it's a reoccurrence to the entire Bible. And I notice every time we have this great calling, we just got to start with the resources we have.
mm-hmm.
And it was inspiring to me to see us grow this podcast over the last 2 years. Fast forward 6 months of podcasts later, no, we're going to the governor. So it's like, okay, we got to level up. All right. It's generating views. It's having good ROI. We've made some sales. We bought our first camera. So we're going to the governor's office now.
Mm-hmm.
We stepped up our microphones. This is like the governor of Missouri, like the most powerful person in Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting in his office. I'm looking at the gear we're using. I'm like, I hope no one else knows videography. It's just like the most startup basic.
Yeah.
Changed lives, man. To this day, it's been probably over a year since I did a podcast with them, changing lives. Fast forward to today, we finally got our two, what are they, the Sony A3A7 cameras, entry level video cameras, they're $2,000-3,000 a piece with the lens. And then we still have an iPhone. So we still have an iPhone, and we stepped up to, like, we're working with the resources we have.
Yeah.
And I think the advice that I learned from there is never get ahead of your skis. So always work with the resources you have. Whenever people ask me about the manufacturing side, same thing. We don't have crazy equipment yet.
Mm-hmm.
For the longest time, our carts we built out of scrap wood. Then we had scrap metal, and we would scrap weld these carts. Now we can finally afford to buy new carts. It's always working with the resources you have. As you're growing and scaling that, how do you retain more clients? You mentioned it. People have a struggle in getting more clients and selling themselves. How do you, as a creative, overcome that barrier of becoming an extrovert and selling?
That was something that I think came a little bit more naturally to me. I'm more of the kind of person, I'll go and talk to the random person across the street. But I
I bet your wife loves that.
yeah, it's something that not most people do. But right now we're actually in a position where we're almost like starting from scratch. We've had these clients that I found when I was 16, 18, which were great, but we're now transitioning to a much higher level of business. So we're in a kind of dichotomy of like almost giving up what we have to go and start something new, leveling up. And it's the same thing where you have to be very clear on your goals and what value you provide. And if people can't pay you for that value, then you can't lower your standards, because ultimately it actually will hurt them too. They're not going to get what they want. You're not able to provide the service you can provide. So you have to be very clear. And in the beginning, when I didn't know better, I would be listening to that client that's yelling at me for an hour, and it was just like, what is going on?
You have bad clients?
Yeah, I mean, and it was really ridiculous things, and they're asking for things that are going to hurt them. And this is also where you have to be true to yourself and say to people like, hey, what you're asking me to do is not good. I can't do this for you.
Right.
Let me send a recommendation. And there was an actual recent client that they were very upset about a video we did. And we went above and beyond. We gave them much more than they even asked for.
Yeah.
And in the end, I basically just emailed and I said, look, I'm going to give you the video back. You can keep your money as well. Use it for other marketing efforts.
Wow.
But in order to stay true to what we do, I'm not going to take a discounted rate or a partial rate. Like, just take all the money, take the video. I give you full permission to do whatever you want with it. We even finished it for her and sent it back. And that's the only way that you can really like cause people to stop talking and have anything bad to say about it.
I feel like I need to shake your hand. It's amazing.
You have to, and that's actually where faith comes in, because the only reason why anyone would do that is Bible verse that says, you have to be blameless and above reproach.
Yeah.
People make mistakes.
Right.
In this case, we didn't really make one, but you have to be blameless and above reproach. Nobody can say they screwed me over.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is where you meant to take it, but the question of like business and faith has always been such a big question for me, because you see a lot of, from our Slavic circle, it's almost even a given that like if you're in, I'm sorry to say it, but like if you're in the standard industries, construction, trucking, it's like normal. You have to do certain things to cut corners. Yeah. And it's like, I want to see an example of how would Christ run a business. Exactly. And do it really well, like at a really high level. Yeah. That's the dream, and I refuse to believe that it's not possible.
Amen. I believe it because I'm a living testimony of it. Whenever we onboard new dealers, I say, here's the roster of all of our clients. you're welcome to go down the roster and call every single one and try to find a disgruntled client. Go online, try to find a bad review. Go online and try to find a forum about us, a lawsuit. We've made mistakes. I'm not saying we're perfect, but every single time we're above and beyond to make it right. There's a time it was actually our very first client that called, and they've been on the road for years, thousands of miles on the rig. And I guess one of the lug nuts was cross-threaded. And they called through my team, got up to me, and I'm on the phone talking to them. They're like, we really feel like it was your fault. And, I'm sitting there thinking, wow, it's been 3 years. You're a year and a half outside of warranty because we have a year and a half warranty. What do you do? And I'm like, well, what would you like me to do? And he's like, well, if you pay for all the parts, so new wheels, new lug nuts, new wheel hub assemblies, it was, a nice 4-figure check. We'll cover the cost of the labor. I'm like, hey, I want to make things right. You were my first client ever. And I want to eventually buy back your RV to put into a museum. I'll do it for you. And I was just like seeing the ROI on that, not even mentioning the peace that I had within of I did something good, but just seeing that positive vibe and energy like go through our company and kind of raise our standard to the next level.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I always tell people, especially business owners, you can succeed in any space. I once at a conference sold over 100 empty water bottles with air pre-sold. I ended up telling everyone, it's an example, like don't buy this empty water bottle, but based and centered on the customer support. Like where businesses today are lacking customer support, lacking companies that go above and beyond the way you just described, the example that you gave. What are some other things that you do that over deliver? It sounds like you do it quite frequently, but really help you propel your business and reputation.
I want people, typically when you sell someone, they're more or less excited and they're like, oh man, I'm going to try this new thing. And usually that's like the most exciting part. After that, it's like in a video space, how it's taking months to get things back. And our standard is the moment they get sold to do a video, that's the least exciting part. And I want them to be more excited afterwards than they did at the beginning.
Ooh, I like that.
So they remember the end more than the beginning.
Boom.
And we want our videos to be so good that we actually have and this is also a big thing in video where people are endlessly in revisions and back and forth. We have a no revision policy.
Wow.
So once we deliver a video and we're upfront, we are creative. So we are hired to do a job and we don't do revisions. We send it to you and we've had big clients like builders in multiple states that I tell them this and they're like, we're concerned about this. And I tell them like, you're hiring us to do the best of the best. If you believe we'll over deliver, which is what we always want to do, then there should be no issues.
Wow.
But that allows us to mitigate their discomfort of going back and forth and allows us to deliver faster. All of these things come from just giving them the best service possible.
I think I'm convinced to bring you my videography business. Do you have a branch in Missouri by any chance?
We can make one.
I love it. Another thing I wanted to cover is scaling. So you took it from 6 figures to 7 figures. I'm pretty confident you'll probably venture into 8 figures this year. Scalability. Like you made a comment earlier that I want to kind of peel back and dive deeper in, is kind of giving up older, smaller clients for new, bigger clients. I have personal experience in that, so it kind of makes sense to me. But before I elaborate on how we did it here, how did you do that? Like, how do you know that, hey, okay, it's time to let this client go and pursue a new client?
I think one of my best business mentors, my wife, was the one that pushed me to do that, because she's like, your worth and your service is worth so much more than people that are taking up your time. And it's not the people that are bad, it's just they're not willing to pay for it. And so I heard a quote, I don't remember where it was, where they said that you can, if you leave your certain clients at one price level, there are others waiting to pay you more money. And maybe that was you that actually said that, but you don't believe that, and you actually have to take that step of faith. You don't see that client waiting. You just have to, by faith, take it. And you have these opportunities to provide more value, higher service.
I remember early on in our business, whenever we were getting videography services, and still to this day, we try to be as conservative as possible in spending, but $500 seemed like a lot, and it still is a lot, don't get me wrong. But learning what like really big professional production studios charge. I once got a quote on what it would cost to make a documentary of my life, and I think they said it'd be like a 2-month film process and this and that, and like we'd go through all the motions. And I'm thinking, it'd be a couple of $1,000s, right? $1.5 million.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I'm like, wow, a team of about, I think it was 5 or 6. Half of the documentary was discovery, I think is what they call it, where they go and they find films, videos from my past life. They take all of that and they, in a combination of um, uh, AI, where they make it like black and white into color, and animations, they almost make it seem like it was real live videotape, and matching the high definition to the high definition where they film my life today. I'm like, $1.5 million. And I'm like, that is the price of a high quality documentary. And it opened my mind to like, how do these entry level startup videography businesses get to that level? And so I started doing my own research. Backstory on me, I did broadcast journalism through high school and journalism freshman year. College, I thought I was going to be a reporter. It was a short season of my life. I don't know where it came from, but I know it left just as quickly as it came. And so I started like doing research on some of these newer movies. We're spending hundreds of $millions on these movies. And it's so interesting how you highlighted, leveling up. And by the way, we're going to make a reel where you said your wife is your best business mentor.
I mean it. I don't just say that to like be funny.
Yeah, that's amazing. I respect that. I can definitely relate to it too. So how we did it at 27 North, we did B2C for the longest time, consumer direct. And then we switched to B2B business model. And whenever a mentor of mine told me, hey, you can go and instead of selling one van to one client, you can get one client that'll order 50 vans. And I'm like, no, that's too good to be true. It almost sounded like, to spend $1.5 million on a documentary is what it sounded like to me when he said that we can go and get one client to 50 vans. He's like, how about this? You hire me, I'll come and I'll help you secure the client. And I was just so blessed by God and his overwhelming favor in my life to where this individual came in and got us our first client to put in an order for 50 vans, and my life was changed forever. At that point, I put myself a benchmark. Every new deal that I'm going to do has to be one of bigger than the previous one that I did. Something that I think intimidates people is the big amount. So if you were to pursue this year and say, do a documentary for $1.5 million, how would you shape that? How would you structure that? How would you pull it off? Because for you, I mean, it would be like, really big step forward. How many more times expense? Like, what is your most, if you can share, what's your biggest project that you've done today?
So this is why we're switching from B2C, like, because all our projects are like a couple $100s to, I don't know, like a couple thousand. And we did last year over 1,000 of those kind of projects.
So what would your thought process be going from a couple of $1,000 project to $1 million project?
It's funny that you mentioned $1 million because just last week, we were putting in our products into our CRM, and by faith, I put in a service in there. I wrote out what the service is, and I wrote down $1 million.
Oh, I love it.
So I'm hiring a salesperson. It's there for them if they get the opportunity. And I don't do documentaries, so I'm not too familiar with that space. Our space is big development, so I'm thinking, who could afford $1 million service in what we do? And that would be someone that has $500 million, $1 billion project developing part of a city itself. And so that just gives me the opportunity to reverse engineer it. Who are those? I don't need to sell to 1,000 people. Now I just need one person.
Go ahead and take your faith to the next level. Add $2.5 million, a $5 million, and $10 million thing to your CRM cities. Google St. Louis and what they spent on videography these last couple of years. Millions of dollars. And the crazy part is whenever investigative reporters started opening all this up, guess who the city hired? Average Joes, like literally average photographers. I don't need to downgrade it, but let's say entry-level photography business owners. They spent millions of dollars on website development, on video, on photography. And I was just sitting there, I'm like, man, I wish I knew about those contracts. I'd go in and bid on them too. So add it 2.5 to 5 to 10 million.
I think there's a Bible verse that kind of relate to this, is like, you need a vision.
Yes.
You can have the tools, you can have everything. I remember my very first video with my dad. I filmed it on, and people would make fun of Samsung phones that they're bad quality. I made it on a Samsung quality phone.
Wow.
It was a little short movie about running the race of faith. And my dad would go show it to people. They're like, "Oh, what kind of camera did you use? Like a $50,000 camera?"
Yeah.
It's an iPhone. It wasn't even an iPhone.
Yeah.
You need to have that vision. You need to have and then once you have the vision, it doesn't matter what you're using.
Yeah, I agree. I remember when we got our first 50 van order, we were still in a granite shop. So it was like a 9,000 square foot granite shop. Ceilings are super low. We had to pull the vans outside to install the roof racks, the air conditioning. And the dealer asked me how I'm going to pull this off. And I told him I'm Ukrainian. What else am I supposed to say? I'm young. I'm Ukrainian. We're going to figure it out. And I'm like, can I share with you a story? He's like, yeah. And I shared with him a story. So like my dad built one of the first, he built one of the first water towers in my own country, in the city of Chile, city of Ukraine. And whenever the individual, I think he was a city administrator, said, hey, can you build me this building? And the word in Ukrainian for water tower is like a really old traditional word. He had no idea what it was. And he's like, yeah, I can do it. And he asked my dad, have you done it before? He's like, no, but I know people that can do it. And so he took the job. He comes to his project manager and says, hey, I got this job we're going to build. And he says the word. And he goes, Peter, which is my dad's name, do you know what that is? And my dad goes, nope. He's like, let me go show you. And he drives him to the neighboring city. And he shows him this huge water tower. And my dad's like, what did I get myself into? And so they're like, we got to find out who built this water tower.
Mm-hmm.
They tracked it down hard and built the water tower, turned it in. And at the end, after they got paid for the job, he goes to the city administrator and says, hey, I got to confess to you. He goes, what is it? And he's like, that water tower, you asked me if I knew what it is. I wasn't kidding when I said no. I had no idea what it was.
That's great.
That's how I feel about big projects. I remember recently someone came up and asked me, hey, can you guys do in 27 North Defense, this ambulance remount? I'm like, we'll figure it out. If we figured out how to do a carbon fiber, monolithic infused shell, similar to the fuselage of an airplane, we can figure out how to remount an ambulance. And so I like how you kind of highlighted it. What would you do if someone asked you for a $1.5 million documentary? Unfortunately, too many people, they don't believe themselves, and they've restrained themselves by limitations of their mind. And so what is a lot of times the answer? No, I've never done it. But I can introduce you to someone else. It's like, if you want to grow, if you want to scale, put yourself out of the comfort zone.
Yeah.
How hard could it be to make a documentary?
Yeah.
Me by myself, hard. But what is something I've learned, you're learning? Use people. Find someone who's made a documentary, hire them, bring in a team, hire the 6, 7, 10 people, pull it off. Like if my dad, not knowing what a water tower is, could build one of the first towers that's still standing today, and we could figure out how to do, some of the craziest projects out here, like expand your mind.
I will share a short story to kind of hopefully inspire people. I was hired when I was like 20 years old by a company that's existed for maybe 60, 70 years.
Wow.
The owner's a little older, and he wants me to create a brand document that encompasses their values, what they do as a company, so that any new employee 50 years from now could keep their values, because the company's technology might change, but they don't want to change their values. And I'm driving to these meetings to pitch this to them. We're watching YouTube videos about what a brand strategy is. And before we sign the documents, they're like, how old are you? And I'm like, I will only tell you if this doesn't affect your decision. And I'm like 20 years old. And I was upfront with them. I'm not deceiving anyone, but I think they really just believed, and their clients still to this day, by the way.
That's amazing.
But it's just having that faith that if you're there to serve people, you're not there to deceive people. You're not there to cheat people out of their money. You're there to provide a service. Nothing ever goes smoothly. You just figure it out.
Yeah. I remember when I was a builder at college, I built like 33 homes in 18 months here in the Springfield area. And it really had a negative impact on me in the construction space when at that time I was, 22, 23 years old. And so finally my builder told me, hey, stop telling people who you are. And so whenever the question arises, I'd say, I'm sorry, my builder doesn't let me do that. And so fast forward, I start my business and the banker asks me how old it is. I was so programmed to say that I'm like, hey, my builder doesn't let me say that. And they're like, what are you talking about? They're like, oh, I used to work for a builder. Anyways. And I said the same thing. Will this affect your decision of getting me the funding? And they said, no. And I told them it was inspiring. but there has been times when it actually had a negative impact.
Yeah, it does.
The way I've overcome that, and anyone listening, if you're in your 20s trying to do a big thing, is I started bringing people with me early on. Friends and family had nothing to do with my business. I'd get them to dress up real nice and go to these meetings with me. Fast forward to today, I'll pull a technician, I'll pull someone from the office, give them a nice dress shirt. Just a couple of weeks ago, I pulled a technician from the wood shop and gave him my nice dress shirt, cleaned up really nice. I mean, this guy looked like he was a banker.
That's cool.
And we went to this meeting. It went very well. But unfortunately, I mean, that's just, I tell our youth, like, hey, today they're telling you you're young, right?
Hmm.
What are they going to tell you when you're older?
You're too old.
There's always going to be an objection.
Yeah.
And, my philosophy is there's 3 solutions to every problem. Well, in conclusion of the podcast, Suits and Shoes, let's talk about suits and shoes.
Yeah.
I notice in a lot of your videos and content that you post, you're always just very business casual. I dress very business casual too. Lately, I've noticed that I really enjoy golf shirts and golf pants.
Hmm.
A few people know this, but I'd say 90+% of the time I'm in a full golfing outfit. So it's an actual golf shirt and actual golf pants. I love it. I feel so free. I feel so casual. What is your go-to outfit day to day?
I like something more casual. Like I really like this quarter zip, like polo sweater.
Yeah.
Like some nice dress pants or like black jeans.
No.
I like to dress up in a way where it shows people that I have high standards, especially my team. When I come into work, I don't want to be the middle dressed. Like I want to be the best dressed so that they understand that there's high standards and we have a high standard in everything we do.
Yeah.
It's just a reflection of what you want people to perceive you as.
Yeah. I'm honored and blessed to be your mentor or coach. So I've seen your financials and I see that God has really blessed you, and you could probably, in my opinion, afford almost anything clothing wise. But I'm yet to see you in Gucci. I'm yet to see you in something really bougie. Now, what a lot of people today who have no business buying those things wrap up their credit cards. What is your kind of ideology or belief and reasoning behind not wearing these luxury brands?
I think it's part of the identity of I want to be in the mindset of I'm just starting off. I'm just here to serve and not make an image of myself as long as possible. And I still drive the very first car I've ever owned.
Wow.
People make fun of me for it. And I think I drive it just because it shows to me that I'm not detached from reality.
Yeah.
Not that you are detached from reality if you buy expensive clothes, but for this stage in my life, it just feels inappropriate.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more I can do with that money.
Yeah.
And maybe that will change in the future when it's a much smaller percentage where it's like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But for now, I don't think it's appropriate for me. I would rather use that money to hire someone. I find much more fulfillment from that.
Investing in yourself and your team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's inspiring. What about shoes? What are some go-to shoes that you wear day to day?
I mean, I run around all the time. Like we're out and about. So I love On Cloud.
Yeah.
That's my go-to. I have a bunch of those. And then there was also Thursday boots.
Yes.
If you ever, those are they're really nice. They're leather inside and out. They're not too expensive.
Yeah.
I love those shoes.
Yeah, I noticed boots have been trending, and On Cloud even started making boots. So I need to give myself a pair and try them out. I just hope it's for comforting reasons and not any other reason. I wonder if it would take some of the pressure off my ankles because I walk on cement a lot, running around the factory and running around here. So I wonder if that would change it up. I'll have to give that a try.
Yeah, Thursday boots have sneakers too. So that's the company's called Thursday boots. Okay. Yeah, they're sneakers, so they're like flatter.
Nice.
I haven't actually had any boots from them.
No, I want to try out the On Cloud boots. I've seen a few middle-aged successful couples wearing them. I'm like, I wonder if it's like a
will it make me look older?
Will people take me more? Will people take me more serious? I sometimes wonder if it's a fad or if it's an actual comfort thing. So that was always intriguing to me. What about Sunday? What are you wearing at church on Sunday?
For Sunday, that's probably the time I dress up most. We're Slavic. We like to make sure we look nice.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I always felt like the dress up shirts and stuff made me look a little old or like not my age. So now it's like, I like those like linen kind of button up shirts that look a little more casual, but they're still really nice.
You still occasionally put on a suit and tie?
Not really. Not anymore. I used to be a big bow tie. I would even wear them to school, but
I can see you in the bow tie. That's
yeah,
awesome.
I was that weird kid at school, but I don't really do it anymore.
Yeah, I was that weird kid with a tie, literally the only kid. We had a class of like 300 that I graduated with, so I was the only kid in the actual tie. Yeah, my perspective on suit and tie changed when one of my bankers, we do maybe $10 million of business with him. He brought his executive team, and it was probably 6 or 7 people, and mostly boys, a couple of girls, and they all show up in their fancy 6-figure trucks and vehicles, and the SUVs, and I'm expecting to be like New York City, trade. What's the trade center?
Yeah,
Stock exchange floor.
yeah,
Dude, they were in like jeans, khakis, polos, tennis shoes. The girls are just super casual. I'm like, what? It's like,
yeah.
it's a pretty big size bank.
hmm
And I'm like, all right, times are changing. And during the tour, I asked them about it, and like, oh, that was like our grandparents. I'm like, wow, am I really 2 generations behind? And so yeah, I started transitioning out of my dress suits and ties and into more business casual.
hmm
Well, we're going to summarize it with inspiration for the young generation and older generation. I love the quote where the individual says, "It's never too late," and it goes through all the years. And even was it Mother Teresa, when she was 89 years old, reached her prime.
hmm
My kind of favorite quote in sharing with the younger generation, or I guess any generation, would be, "Just start.
Yeah.
Just start. You don't have it figured out. If anyone tells you they have it figured out, they're lying. No one has it figured out. We just have different levels of information and knowledge
hmm
that we can share with each other." What is your last words of wisdom to inspire?
I would challenge anyone, no matter their stage in life, to excel in every area of their life. Because if Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and you were to follow his standard of how things should be, which is perfection,
Yeah.
through grace in him, but in every area of your life, not just in church, not just in work, but
Right.
I would challenge you to do it in every area. And that's the hardest thing to do, but I think that's the thing that you can do if you want to be the best, most faithful steward
Yeah.
of everything that you're given.
Amen. I love that. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this amazing conversation that we had today. Please share this with someone that you feel like just needs to hear this. All my videographers and photographers out there, take notes, take that step of faith, scale, grow your business, let go of those clients that are yelling and arguing with you. Go and pursue new clients. Take on projects that you think you don't qualify for. And of course, comment in the section below if you want to be featured on this podcast, or know someone that should be featured on this podcast. Drop in the comment section. You can connect with me on my website at www.pavelbosovik.com. You can also punch my name into Google. Humble Flex there. You live humble flex there. You live humble flex there. You live humble